Hey everyone, welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. Today, we're diving into a chilling collection of terrifying true stories straight from Reddit. Each one is verified and undeniably unsettling, guaranteed to keep you hooked and on edge. Whether you're studying, relaxing, or just looking for a thrilling listen, these real-life encounters will surely captivate you. So, buckle up and get ready as we explore some deeply disturbing and creepy experiences. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. Today, I'm sharing a truly chilling experience that a Reddit user had with a creepy family. Back in 2018 or 2019, a 25-year-old woman who was 18 or 19 at the time was living in Nebraska. She grew up in the largest city in the state, though it was still surrounded by vast corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, and wealthy people were building massive homes on the outskirts, blending the city with the countryside. She had a good friend whose parents owned one of those large houses right on the border between the city and the fields. They often hung out at his place. It was a blast, with lots of land to ride 4x4s, a hot tub, and a large living room perfect for binge-watching sports and reality shows. The parents were very laid back, allowing them to drink inside the house, which made it even better. But the young woman was always scared of the dark, so she avoided going outside after dusk because there was minimal lighting and neighbors were miles away. She often felt uneasy driving to and from the house late at night, but nothing had happened until one night. The drive to her friend's place involved a long, curvy, two-way road lined with dense trees on both sides. Along the way, she passed one of the city's largest cemeteries. The street lamps were sparse and traffic was scarce, making the road inherently creepy. She admitted to often speeding through this section just to get it over with quickly. It was a perfect spring night around 10 p.m. She was driving with the windows down, music playing, when she rounded a curve and suddenly had to slam her brakes. About 50 yards ahead, standing silently in the middle of the road, was what appeared to be a family. Picture a pitch-black road surrounded by dense forest, illuminated only by her car's headlights. The family comprised a tall, slim woman, a man of average height and build, and a child with short hair. She couldn't tell the child's gender or see their faces clearly due to the darkness. The mother was pushing an empty stroller, surprisingly. Their clothing looked normal, not ragged but not fancy either. They weren't holding any light source, which meant they had been walking silently in pitch darkness. They were all facing away from her, moving in the same direction she was heading. She turned down the music to listen for voices or conversation, but there was complete silence. Goosebumps rose on her arms. She stopped her car behind them, waiting for them to move out of the way. Yet, they seemed utterly unaffected by her presence, not even glancing back. The surreal silence made her question her sanity. Then, all at once, the entire group stopped walking and slowly turned to face her car. At that moment, terror gripped her so fiercely that she didn't even look at their faces. She slammed her car into reverse, backing up for about 20 seconds before making a U-turn, nearly losing control, and sped off in the opposite direction. The image that stuck with her the most was the empty stroller. It chilled her to the bone. She glanced in her rearview mirror again and again, but never saw them behind her. She asked her friend and his family about it afterward, but was met with skeptical looks that made her feel insane. Every time she recounts this story, reactions vary. Some accuse her of fabricating it, some think it's crazy, while others share similar stories. She guesses it was either some strange family trying to scare someone, a possible distraction for a robbery or worse, or something far more sinister. For her own peace of mind, she clings to the hope that it was merely a frightening prank by some weird people. But without a doubt, this remains the most terrifying experience she has ever had. When I was 19, I lived with my mom in a ranch-style house situated on a quiet road bordered by a large field with a highway about half a mile away. Nearby, there was a somewhat eccentric farmer on one side and a rundown, abandoned crack house on the other, so the area was pretty isolated. I was working full-time and attending school full-time. One of my late classes ended around 10:30 p.m., so I often didn't get home until about 11:15 p.m. One night while driving home, I noticed a man walking down the road wearing a bright yellow shirt and track pants. His outfit stood out, and when I glanced over as I drove past, he turned, smiled, and waved at me. That gesture really unsettled me, so I quickly sped the rest of the way home, pulling into the driveway, and immediately double-checked that all doors and windows were locked. I sat on the couch, feeling rather paranoid, waiting to see if the man would pass by. He didn't. Instead, another man wearing darker clothes appeared alongside him, and the two actually came up my driveway and began fiddling with my car, testing the handles and such. By then, I was pretty worried. I had forgotten to grab my phone from the car and feared they might have been attempting to break in. Suddenly, the man in the yellow shirt started approaching the front door. Panicked, I woke up my mom and tried to explain what was happening. Just then, we heard the doorknob slowly turning. Fortunately, the door was deadbolt. My mom got up and opened the door slightly. The man knocked and said, "You dropped your wallet." I quickly told my mom my wallet was in my purse. She calmly told them it was late and they should not be knocking on doors at this hour. He responded with, "Okay, I'm not a bad guy, just so you know." The porch light was on due to a sensor, but then it suddenly went off. He tried the doorknob again, prompting my mom to grab her gun, and warned loudly that if he tried again, she'd open the door and shoot. For reasons unknown, she said that instead of waiting for the police, the men took off down the road. My mom peeked out a window and spotted someone in the backyard too, who quickly ran after the others. The police came, searched the property and the nearby crack house, where they arrested 5 men, including the guy in the yellow shirt. Thankfully, nothing like that ever happened again, but I remained on edge for a long time. Even now, living in a much safer area, I always triple-check the doors are locked. To the weird guys who told me I found her wallet, let's never meet again. At the time, I was about 26 years old, living in a rough neighborhood of a big city. Walking home late at night was not something I did often, but this particular night after visiting a friend's place, I found myself making the journey alone. About 10 minutes into my walk to my apartment, I noticed a van trailing me. This was unfortunately a common scenario in my city, especially for young women in unsafe areas. Being propositioned or harassed was almost expected. Despite this, I felt somewhat desensitized and annoyed rather than outright scared. To increase my safety, I crossed to the opposite side of the road, hoping distancing myself would deter them. But instead of backing off, the van took a side street before returning to my path, pulling up right beside me. I could see there were 2 men inside, possibly brothers or twins, both with dark complexions and short dark hair. Their eyes were unsettling, and neither looked friendly. When I told them firmly I was not interested, they kept circling and following me relentlessly, even crossing streets whenever I did, showing no intention of letting me go. It was only when I yelled at them to leave me alone that they abruptly sped past. I thought I was finally free, began pulling out my phone to call my sister, and then, suddenly, the van screeched back to a stop right beside me. One of the men jumped out and approached with an aggressive manner, as if ready to grab me. In that terrifying moment, I tilted my phone and started a live video call, telling them I was on camera, informing my friends of the situation and location, and warning that the police had been alerted. He hesitated, weighing whether I was bluffing or serious. Holding my phone higher, as if to give my fake audience a better view, he finally retreated back into the van, and they sped away. That night changed me forever. I am now afraid to walk alone, even during the day. The experience was terrifying, and to this day I stay alert and cautious, reminding everyone to be safe out there. To those 2 men in the van, let's never meet again. I'm going to share a chilling experience from my time working at a gas station back in the early 90s, a story that still sends shivers down my spine. My dad, an Army veteran of 21 years, had retired and settled in a small town in Central Florida. Bored after a couple of years, he decided to return to work at local gas stations. Because of the town's laid-back vibe, the owners didn't mind if I helped out, as long as I didn't sell any restricted items. One evening, shortly after my 15th birthday, I was at the station reading at my usual table by the window, feet up, sipping Mountain Dew, and snacking quietly. The place was pretty empty, just a few locals around, when I noticed a woman walking through the parking lot, coming from the direction of the interstate. That felt off. Not many people walked in that area, especially not from the interstate side. I assumed maybe she had car trouble and needed to make a call or get a tow. But then things got strange. The woman came inside and lingered, and I felt an uneasy vibe radiating off her. She approached my dad, spinning a story about being stranded and needing a ride to the next big town, Ocala. My dad made it clear he was working and couldn't take her. Then, she looked over at me, but wasn't facing him. Dad caught my eye and gave a subtle shake of his head, a warning. Suddenly, she turned to Dad again and asked if I could take her. Dad explained that since I only had my learner's permit, I couldn't drive her anywhere and come back legally. Usually, I would have agreed to help her, as I had done before, but Dad's dismissive tone told me to listen. There was something off about this woman. He had picked up on it the moment he saw her walking up the driveway. She cursed at him angrily, and Dad told her to leave. She slammed the door open behind her with such force, I thought the glass would shatter. I kept watching her as she strode back out to the interstate and climbed the ramp going north. That was the last I saw of her. Fast forward nearly a year later, I was in my bedroom when my dad called me urgently into the living room. On the TV screen was a mugshot, the very same woman who'd visited our gas station. She was later convicted as a serial killer and eventually put to death. Knowing how close that encounter came to becoming something horrific still haunts me. I often wonder what might have happened if Dad hadn't refused her. That day, I realized sometimes instincts and warnings are life-saving. They can keep you from becoming a nightmare you never thought possible. I want to share a story that's taken me years to open up about due to both fear and embarrassment. It's more than just therapy for me now. It's a warning to everyone. Be extremely cautious about who you meet on social media. Back in 2018, I was going through the end of a very tumultuous marriage. My ex-husband and I had been in a polyamorous relationship for about 3 years. Around this time, I met a man named Jez on OkCupid. I was 28 and he was 42. We connected instantly, and after a few weeks of chatting, I agreed to meet him at a restaurant near my home. We talked for hours, and I eventually invited him over to meet my husband. The introduction went well, and Jez and I began dating. At first, Jez completely swept me off my feet. He was sweet, caring, and gave me his full attention, validating everything I said. He admired my strength and wisdom, almost worshiping me for who I was and who I was becoming. He showered me with gifts, flowers, and random acts of kindness, making me feel safe, wanted, and loved. It was unlike any relationship I'd experienced. Mall nights talking, laughing, making plans, and sharing love. However, after a few weeks, Jez had a meltdown over my polyamorous lifestyle. He told me he was already falling for me and couldn't handle sharing me. I respected his boundaries and ended things that night, sad but confident it was for the best. Then, the following week, he sent flowers and showed up at my workplace, begging for another chance. He promised he'd try to accept it, wanting to take this journey together. Even though it scared me, we continued dating, and it was as wonderful as before. But by August, my marriage officially ended, and by October, my husband had moved out. I was unemployed and knew I couldn't afford rent alone, so I needed a roommate. Jez offered to move in. Though hesitant, I agreed. I thought, how bad could it be? That's when everything changed. Jez became controlling, jealous, and lazy. The complete opposite of who I'd known. His behavior worsened over time. Hanging out with friends became a burden, because he would bombard me with guilt for leaving him alone or not involving him. But if I tried to include him, he treated it like an annoyance. December 2018 was a turning point. We went to my work Christmas party. Initially, he refused to go, but at the last minute insisted on coming along, then sulked and grumbled the entire night. Despite everyone's warmth and inclusion, he muttered insults under his breath. When my manager praised how he'd transformed my life, Jez snapped, "You don't know me." I was stunned. Later that night, we argued, and Jez's anger escalated quickly. He screamed, followed me to my bedroom, punched a door inches from my head, and stared into my eyes with black, threatening eyes. I was terrified. My whole body shut down as I sank to the floor in a panic attack. He mocked me relentlessly. He then threatened to put my social security number on the dark web. That was the breaking point for me. I screamed at him to leave. Jez played the victim, claiming I'd made him fall in love just to dump him. My manager and her husband followed me home that evening, worried for my safety. I walked into a scene where this grown man was on his knees, begging me for mercy, crying and professing love. It was surreal. After a brief separation, Jez bombarded me with apologies, acting like the man I originally fell for. But it wasn't long before the cycle of manipulation, control, and abuse repeated. He would belittle me, snap over trivial things, accuse me of catfishing him, and complain about my appearance. The stress and isolation took a toll. I stopped taking care of myself. I once lost a dear friend to tragedy, and Jez's response was indifferent, even cruel. When I distanced myself, he accused me of being a horrible girlfriend, harassing me at work, and blowing up my phone. He was relentless. One night, after a fight, Jez cranked up the TV volume so high it shook the walls, then laughed hysterically. I'd begged him to let me sleep, but he mocked me for crying. He punched the door again and threatened me with clear, hostile intent. That's when I realized how dangerous he truly was. Eventually, I contacted my landlord, who supported me by changing locks and providing contacts for police protection. Jez tried to transfer the lease to himself, but my landlord didn't fall for it. It took weeks for Jez to stop messaging me, and only after he declared he'd always love me did the nightmare end. Years later, I'm still piecing myself back together. I still don't understand the endgame. When I asked him what happened to the man I fell for, he smirked and said, "That guy doesn't exist. I told you what I had to tell you to get you away from that ex-husband. You just fell for it. Jez, let's never meet again." A few years ago, I found myself in a situation that quickly turned into a nightmare. I'm a 36-year-old woman from Sweden, working in mental health care for nearly 2 decades, mostly with patients suffering from psychotic disorders like schizophrenia. During my time at a group home, I became close with several coworkers and one woman in particular, let's call her M, who had a history of schizophrenia but was reportedly stable and medicated. Despite her mental health struggles, we became friends, and when M was evicted from her apartment after an incident where she mistakenly entered a neighbor's apartment, she asked if she could move in with me since she was homeless. Though my apartment was small, a 1-bedroom with a living room, kitchen, and bathroom, I agreed, offering her the living room with a couch for sleeping, which she declined, claiming it was comfortable enough. To give her some privacy, I hung a thick velvet curtain to divide our living spaces. Initially, I was understanding of her situation and mental health challenges. However, living together soon became an ordeal. M was often awake at odd hours, making coffee at 2:30 or 3 a.m. and disrupting my much-needed rest. I have epilepsy and rely on sleep to manage it. This sleep deprivation was dangerous. Her coffee-making noises just outside my bedroom door repeatedly woke me up despite my polite requests for her to limit the disturbance. M's habits grew increasingly frustrating. She'd binge-ate large quantities of my food, often emptying the fridge and pantry at inconvenient times, yet apologized only sporadically and without much sincerity. She also failed to maintain cleanliness. Hair, nails, and even pee drops were frequently left scattered in the bathroom, attracting pests like silverfish. When I gently asked her to clean more often, her promises never materialized. Our living situation stifled me socially and emotionally. The man I was dating struggled to find space for us to spend time together because of M's constant presence. Even when I suggested she spend a night away to give us some privacy, she reluctantly agreed, but made a big deal out of it. After her night away, I noticed my cats were afraid of her, withdrawing to my bedroom and avoiding interactions, a strange behavior given her shy and timid demeanor. Several disturbing incidents escalated my fears. At one point, I found M standing silently and staring at me and my boyfriend in a doorway late at night. The haunting image of her long black hair covering her face reminded me of scenes from horror movies. Soon after, I discovered a kitchen knife on the floor where she had slammed the door shut, confirming my fear she was spiraling into psychosis. M had also stolen my prescribed sleeping pills, which I desperately needed to manage my epilepsy. I confronted her several times, but she denied it. Despite no one else having access to my medications, the tension was suffocating, leaving me exhausted and afraid in my own home. The breaking point came during a night when I woke up to the smell of burning coffee grounds in a frying pan. When I stopped the fire, N's lifeless, black-eyed expression horrified me. I suspected she was in full psychosis. That night, I knew I had to take action. I enlisted a friend to stay with me as I confronted M and insisted she move out immediately, despite our 30-day notice agreement. M became silent and unresponsive during the conversation and left the keys without looking back. Later, I discovered from friends and police reports that M's eviction stemmed from a much darker incident. She had broken into an ex-partner's apartment wielding a knife, allegedly to harm a baby. I was sickened to realize she had lied to me about her mental stability and the reasons behind her eviction. This revelation explained much of her erratic and dangerous behavior while living with me. Despite the trauma, I couldn't bring myself to hate her, understanding her illness, but recognizing the serious threat she posed. Her decline culminated in her arrest and sentencing for aggravated arson after she burned down her own apartment under delusions. She is now confined to a mental institution, likely never to live freely again. Reflecting on the experience, I'm grateful to be safe, but haunted by the ordeal. It made me realize how important boundaries are and the risks involved when mental illness is left unmanaged. To those facing similar situations, protect yourself, trust your instincts, and seek help. Please, let's never meet again. M. 3 years ago, when I was 26 with medium-length bleached blonde hair, I experienced something truly terrifying on my way home late at night. I lived in a rough part of a large city and was quite accustomed to sketchy situations. That night, I was walking home from a friend's place when I noticed a van following me. At first, I wasn't scared. This kind of street harassment was sadly common in my area. I tried to stay alert, crossing the street multiple times to distance myself from the van, which kept circling back every time I switched sides. Eventually, the van pulled up right beside me, and one of the men inside, looking to be twins or brothers with dark complexions and short dark hair, jumped out aggressively. He approached me as if about to force me into the vehicle. With quick thinking, I tilted my phone to start a live video, telling him I was recording and the police had been notified, even sharing his license plate number. This seemed to give him pause, and he quickly got back into the van, speeding away. Since that night, I haven't been the same. The fear of walking alone has stayed with me, even during the day. It's a chilling reminder to always be vigilant and trust your instincts. To the 2 men in the van who terrorized me, let's never meet again. Back when I was 10, my family and I decided to visit my grandmother over spring break. My cousin joined us, and one day, we went to the YMCA to hang out. The place was nearly empty except for a couple of adults exercising. After spending a couple of hours playing basketball and tag, we grew bored. Since the pool is pretty cool and empty except for the lifeguard, we changed into our swimsuits and went swimming. After an hour or so, we wanted to warm up and dry off, so when the lifeguard offered to let us use the sauna, even though the sign said 18 and older, we were thrilled. She unlocked the glass door for us, cranked up the heat, and left. We noticed she seemed to lock the door behind her, but we shrugged it off. The sauna got uncomfortably hot quickly, but we thought it was just helping us warm up after being in the cold pool. After about 15 minutes, it started getting too hot, and we decided to leave. However, when I tried the door, it wouldn't budge. We shook and twisted the knob, but to no avail. We figured the lifeguard would be back soon, so we sat and waited, but after banging, yelling, and screaming for her to let us out, she just stared ahead, ignoring us. By 25 minutes in, the heat was unbearable. Breathing felt like inhaling fire, and our skin and eyes burned. My cousin lay face down with a towel over her head, barely moving. We realized the lifeguard was deliberately locking us in. Eventually, a man came by and tried to enter the sauna. I waved him off, and before long, the lifeguard returned, unlocked the door, and let him in. As we rushed out, the lifeguard tried to shove us back inside. We ran to the changing room, shaken and terrified. When we told my grandmother later, she didn't believe us and thought maybe we were exaggerating. But honestly, I think that woman intended to leave us in that sauna to cook. Even now, I have panic attacks in small spaces or when I get too warm, and I constantly replay that terrifying experience. So, to the lifeguard at the YMCA, let's not ever meet again. I'm a 36-year-old woman from Sweden, and I've worked in mental health care for the past 18 years, mostly supporting individuals with psychotic illnesses like schizophrenia. For 9 years, I worked at a group home where I grew very close to my coworkers, especially 2 women. A few years ago, another woman joined our group. We'll call her M. She was shy, timid, and friendly, and we all got along well. However, M was often on long-term sick leave due to her mental health struggles, so we didn't see her much at work. Still, she showed up for our after-work dinners, and we kept in touch. M told us she had a history of schizophrenia, much like the patients we cared for, but she claimed to be medicated and stable for years. With my experience in psychiatry, I had no judgment toward her, and even after what happened, I still don't. In the summer of 2023, I transitioned to a new mental health care job focused on forensic psychiatry, working with mentally ill offenders. Despite the change, the 4 of us kept meeting for dinners. M shared she'd been evicted from her apartment after an incident where she accidentally entered her neighbor's home at night. She explained that the doors all looked identical, and she mistook the neighbor's door for her own. The neighbors apparently made a huge scene, reported her to the police, and she was evicted. I felt sympathy, thinking maybe the landlord judged her due to her medical history. I asked if there was more to the story, but she insisted that was it. In Sweden, being evicted makes it nearly impossible to find a new apartment, so M asked if she could move in with me since she was effectively homeless. I said yes. Mistakenly, I have often gotten into uncomfortable situations by saying yes before thinking about myself. I didn't anticipate the severity of what would follow. I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment with a living room, kitchen, and bathroom, plus 2 cats. I arranged for M to have the living room, offering to get rid of my couch so she could have a proper bed, but she insisted my couch was comfortable. Since the living room is separated by an open arch, not a door, from my bedroom, I hung a heavy velvet curtain to give her some privacy. The kitchen door sometimes stays open for my cats to come and go, while the living room door remains closed. And wasn't working then on a long-term sick leave. I work shifts, sometimes early mornings, sometimes late nights. I suffer from severe insomnia and need sleep medication, but still wake easily. I politely asked her if she could try to be quieter in the mornings before my early shifts since I needed the rest. She was a heavy smoker and coffee drinker, so to help, I even bought her a coffee machine, even though I rarely drink coffee myself. Despite this, during the first night together, She kept getting up multiple times to smoke and make coffee very early in the morning, around 5 a.m., which woke me up. I kindly asked her to wait until 6 a.m. for coffee, since I needed just a little more rest. She said she couldn't sleep otherwise and wanted coffee with her cigarettes, promising to try to wait next time I had to work. I accepted, but things didn't improve. She continued waking me early and promised repeatedly she'd stop, yet insisted on her coffee and cigarettes routine. Em also insisted I be silent by 10 p.m. because that's when she wanted to sleep. I respected that, but her behavior became increasingly frustrating. She often binge ate, completely emptying my fridge and pantry unexpectedly. Once, she ate an entire big loaf of bread I'd just bought and texted me apologizing, promising to pay me back when she could. I told her she was welcome to anything I had, but it became expensive, especially when it happened at inconvenient times after my shifts when I'd come home hungry. She was messy. Left hair everywhere in the bathroom sink, on the floor and bathtub. She also left fingernails and toenails scattered on the bathroom floor. Pee drops were often left on the toilet seat after she used it. One day, I saw a silverfish on the floor, a bug that feeds on hair and skin, and realized the bathroom's filth was inviting pests. I tried hinting gently that we should clean more often by placing a broom and shovel in the bathroom. That didn't work, so I finally told her outright, still trying to be gentle. Do you think we could please clean the bathroom floor more often? We lose hair when brushing, and I'm worried about pests. She smiled but never changed. I started dating a guy during this time, but didn't like the idea of us having any alone time. When I asked if we could have a night just for ourselves every now and then, even if it meant Em had the apartment alone, she didn't want to leave. She claimed she had no friends or family and nowhere to go, even though I was asking for just a few hours. One coworker, seeing how stressed I was, offered for Em to stay the night at her place, and Em accepted after much hesitation. I even spent a night away to give her more privacy. But when I came home, I found my cat's water bowl completely dry, emptied and wiped clean, with no spills anywhere. Em blamed the cats, but I knew better. The cats, normally social and affectionate, were now avoiding her and rarely left my bedroom except to eat or use the litter box. One of my most cherished possessions is a saucepan from the 1960s. It was my grandmother's and had great sentimental value. Em burned it one day and didn't bother cleaning or apologizing. She simply left it on the stove and went out to smoke. She also broke dishes multiple times without replacing or apologizing. These small but painful acts added to my frustration. On top of that, she stole my prescribed sleeping pills, 20 gone from my nightstand, where I kept only one per night. She denied it, but no one else could have taken them. The summer heat made the apartment unbearable. The space was too small for two people, and I felt trapped. My cats were scared, I had no privacy, and Em continued to wake me up at night and steal my food. Out of nowhere, an old elementary school friend messaged me on Facebook, asking how I knew Em. When I told them she was my roommate, they revealed more. Em had been evicted not just for entering the wrong apartment, but because she had broken into her ex-girlfriend's family's place, sneaking up to their sleeping baby with a knife. The father had wrestled her down and saved the child. I was horrified. This explained so much about her erratic behavior and lies about her stability. I confronted Em about this, learning she had been lying about her mental health and stability. My frustration and paranoia grew. However, we had a lease agreement requiring 30 days notice to move out. I wanted to avoid chaos, so I tried to approach it as kindly as possible. I told her I missed my alone time and that the apartment was too small for both of us, stressing it wasn't personal and that I hoped we could still be friends. Em seemed crushed and said moving out wasn't possible. The first night after this talk, she made coffee at 2:30 a.m., waking me up again. I almost lost it. I asked her repeatedly not to make coffee before I woke up, but she ignored me, simply staring out the window without answering. My frustration exploded when she continued making messes, eating my food, and waking me. I finally unplugged the coffee machine and stored it in the attic, only accessible to me. Then, she started boiling coffee powder in a frying pan at 3 a.m., burning it. That was the final straw. I was terrified. Her face was dead, her eyes black. I suspected she was having a psychotic break. I stopped the fire and fled to the living room, silent and shaken. She had an appointment with her psychiatrist the next day. While she was away, I packed her belongings and messaged her, demanding she pick them up and return my keys. I arranged a hostel for her. She didn't respond immediately. A friend stayed with me for support in case M resisted moving out, but she left quietly, dropped off the keys, and moved away. I later learned she briefly moved in with a boyfriend, then got her own apartment and job. In January, a former coworker told me M had called her, ranting delusional thoughts about a baby she had to save and burning everything to protect friends and family. M had even called emergency services, but wasn't taken seriously. She then burned down her apartment, fighting off neighbors who tried to save her. She was arrested and recently sentenced for aggravated arson. Ironically, she might end up confined in the very facility where I used to work. It turned out M had stopped taking her meds because she felt numb and thought she was stable enough on her own. When she stared blankly and silently during her stay with me, she was slipping into psychosis. The nights she burned coffee and stood silently watching us in doorways haunt me to this day. I often wonder what would have happened if I'd been a heavy sleeper, or if she had stayed longer. It's chilling to think about the baby she tried to harm before her eviction. I haven't shared this story with many friends. These authentic accounts serve as a stark reminder that reality often surpasses fiction in its capacity to frighten. Whether facing stalkers, unsettling neighbors, or frightening roommates, the threat of fear weaves unpredictably through our daily lives. The chilling nature of these true stories underscores how unexpectedly frightening the world around us can be. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Stories, where today we plunge into a series of terrifying true accounts, each verified and deeply unsettling. Brace yourself as we traverse through a variety of chilling encounters guaranteed to keep you on edge. Let's begin with a genuinely eerie experience from a Reddit user living in Nebraska between 2018 and 2019. Driving home late one night along a dark, winding road bordered by dense forest and passing a large cemetery, she suddenly brakes hard to avoid a silent family walking in the middle of the road, an unnerving trio comprising a tall, slender woman pushing an empty stroller, a man of average build, and a child whose features were obscured. What made the encounter profoundly disturbing was their silence, lack of reaction, and the empty stroller, culminating in all three slowly turning to face the car before she fled in terror. Despite questioning friends and family, she was met mostly with disbelief, leaving the haunting memory etched forever in her mind. Next, a 19-year-old woman recalls a tense night near her home, surrounded by dubious characters, a yellow-shirt man and his accomplice, both attempting to infiltrate her house. After locking down her doors and waking her mother, they face an alarming confrontation, with one intruder knocking to claim she dropped a wallet. The situation escalated until police intervention led to arrests, but the anxiety lingered long after, reinforcing the importance of vigilance. A young woman living in a rough part of a city shares her unsettling experience of being followed by a van with two men. Used to unwanted advances, she initially shrugged it off, but when they persistently chased her, even after crossing the street multiple times, her intuition shifted from annoyance to fear. When one man aggressively approached her, she cleverly used her phone to fake a live stream and call the police, prompting their retreat. Since then, her sense of security was forever shattered. In a small Florida town of the early 90s, a teenager working alongside her Army-retired father at a gas station recounts a disturbing encounter with a strange woman asking for a ride. Although the father sensed something wrong and refused assistance, The woman's aggressive reaction and eerie departure haunt the storyteller, especially when, months later, the woman appears on TV as a convicted serial killer, the near miss of a life-altering horror. A heart-wrenching tale follows a woman who fell into a relationship with a sociopath she met online. Initially captivated by his charm, gift-giving, and flattering attention, the relationship quickly soured as controlling and abusive behaviors surfaced, lasting through breakups, manipulations, and personal crises. With a heartbreaking journey of entrapment and emotional turmoil, she finally found the courage to break free, sharing her story as a cautionary tale about trusting appearances and the dangers lurking beneath. Moving to a roommate experience gone horrifyingly wrong, a Swedish woman who took in a friend named M discovered unsettling behaviors ranging from nocturnal disturbances, neglect, and theft to a terrifying psychotic episode culminating in arson. Despite empathy and attempts to support, the situation deteriorated, resulting in eviction and legal consequences for M. The narrator grapples with the trauma and complexity of mental illness intersecting with personal boundaries and safety. A harrowing account of stalking arrives next from a bikini coffee stand barista working early morning shifts. Initially routine encounters with harassing patrons spiral into a year-long nightmare involving obscene gestures, explicit threatening letters, and persistent harassment. Despite police involvement, the stalker's behavior continued, requiring the narrator to relocate and change her identity to escape the torment, a stark reminder of the horrors that can infiltrate our everyday lives. A chilling YMCA sauna incident unfolds as two young girls are locked inside a sauna by a negligent lifeguard who cranks up the temperature and ignores their pleas for help. Facing blistering heat and suffocating conditions for nearly 45 minutes, their survival was only ensured by a passerby's timely intervention. The incident left lasting trauma and unanswered questions about the lifeguard's intentions and accountability. Lastly, a terrifying roommate story involves a woman sharing her home with a seemingly fragile friend who harbored a dark, dangerous past. From bizarre behaviors to threatening actions like entering a neighbor's apartment with a knife, the situation devolved into fear, paranoia, and eventual eviction. Despite attempts to maintain kindness and understanding, safety prevailed, underlining the delicate balance between empathy and self-protection. These real-life stories expose the unsettling truth that reality often outstrips fiction and horror. Whether it's confrontations with sinister strangers, manipulative relationships, or terrifying breaches of trust, they remind us to stay vigilant and heed our instincts. If these stories captivated you and sent chills down your spine, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to reach 500,000 subscribers, and with your support, we can continue delivering genuine, spine-tingling content that keeps you hooked. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.